The opening chapter of the rugby's greatest rivalry tour has arrived, and although everyone is already looking ahead to the enormous battles between the All Blacks and Springboks, there is another fascinating contest that could tell us a great deal about where New Zealand currently stands. The Stormers are preparing to welcome Dave Rennie's All Blacks to Cape Town for a historic encounter, and this match carries far more significance than a simple warm-up fixture. For Rennie, it is another opportunity to test combinations, examine his squad under pressure, and discover which players are capable of stepping up when the intensity rises. For the Stormers, meanwhile, this is a chance to create history against one of the most famous teams in international rugby and demonstrate that South African club rugby remains capable of challenging the very best. The atmosphere at DHL Stadium should be extraordinary, because this is not a fixture supporters have seen before. The Stormers and All Blacks have never met in this setting, and the occasion gives the Cape Town side an opportunity to measure themselves against a team that has already enjoyed an encouraging start under Rennie. The former Wallabies coach inherited an All Black side that needed renewed confidence and a clearer sense of direction, and the early evidence has been extremely positive. Victories over France, Italy, and Ireland have given New Zealand momentum, but the challenge now becomes maintaining that momentum when the surroundings, opposition, and expectations change. The All Blacks know that their ultimate target is the Springboks, but they cannot afford to treat the Stormers as merely an obstacle on the way to that series. In fact, this could be one of the most useful matches of the entire tour because the Stormers possess several characteristics that make them an excellent preparation opponent. Their physicality, set-piece strength, ball-carrying ability, and attacking ambition can force the All Blacks to confront problems that will become even more important when they eventually face South Africa. That is why the idea of this match providing answers is so important for Rennie. Coaches rarely learn enough from comfortable victories, because weaknesses can remain hidden when an opponent fails to apply sufficient pressure. A demanding match against a strong club side can reveal precisely where a team needs improvement. The Stormers are therefore capable of giving the All Blacks a valuable examination before the biggest tests arrive. One of the most obvious battles will take place in the forwards, particularly at scrum and lineout. The Stormers have developed a reputation for producing a powerful set piece, and that strength becomes even more significant against an All Black side trying to establish control from the opening whistle. Beauden Barrett, one of the most experienced players in the New Zealand squad, has already identified the importance of achieving parity in the forwards, and that assessment makes perfect sense. If the Stormers gain dominance at scrum time or consistently disrupt possession at the lineout, they can dictate territory and force the All Blacks into uncomfortable defensive situations. Conversely, if New Zealand can establish control up front, it will give their backs the platform they need to attack with greater freedom. That battle could ultimately determine the rhythm of the entire contest. The Stormers also have the ability to make life difficult for the All Blacks in open play. Their attacking philosophy encourages players to move the ball quickly, challenge defensive structures, and exploit space whenever it appears. But beneath that attacking identity is a physical forward pack capable of carrying hard and generating momentum. Evan Roos is particularly important in this regard because his ability to carry, compete at the breakdown, and force defenders into difficult decisions can change the shape of a match. If Roos and his fellow forwards can consistently win collisions, the Stormers will have an opportunity to put the All Blacks under sustained pressure rather than simply defending wave after wave of New Zealand attack. The home side also has another major advantage: familiarity. The Stormers know the conditions in Cape Town, they understand the stadium, and they will have the energy of a passionate home crowd behind them. Those details may sound small, but in a high-intensity rugby match they can become significant. The All Blacks, meanwhile, are entering unfamiliar territory and must adapt quickly. Travel, atmosphere, pressure, and the physical demands of facing a strong South African club can all contribute to a difficult opening. This is precisely why Rennie will want his players to begin with discipline. If New Zealand give away early penalties, lose control of the breakdown, or allow the Stormers to build confidence through repeated carries, the home side could become extremely dangerous. The All Blacks will need to make their tackles, protect their ball, and avoid giving the Stormers cheap opportunities to gain territory. Another fascinating aspect of this fixture is the potential battle between experience and ambition. Beauden Barrett represents an era of All Blacks rugby that has already achieved extraordinary success, while the newer generation is attempting to establish its own identity. Under Rennie, the challenge is to combine that experience with fresh energy. Senior players must guide younger teammates, but the younger players must also demonstrate that they belong at test level. Matches against strong club opposition provide an ideal environment for that development because there is pressure without quite the same margin for error as a major international test. A player who performs brilliantly against the Stormers can strengthen his claim for selection when the All Blacks face the Springboks. Equally, a player who struggles will provide the coaching staff with valuable information about areas that need attention. That competitive environment is one of the most important reasons this fixture matters. It is not simply about winning. It is about discovering which combinations can survive when the pressure increases. The tactical battle could become particularly interesting if the Stormers attempt to slow down the All Blacks through territorial kicking and physical defense. New Zealand traditionally prefer to play with pace and ambition, but the best South African teams are experts at disrupting rhythm. If the Stormers can force the All Blacks to play from deep positions, they may create opportunities to turn defense into attack. On the other hand, if New Zealand can move the ball quickly and get their dangerous backs into space, the game could begin to resemble the fast, confident rugby that produced their recent victories. The ability to change tactics during the match will therefore be crucial. Neither side can assume that the first plan will work for 80 minutes. Momentum will move, conditions will change, and both coaching groups will need to react. That is where Rennie faces one of his most important challenges. A successful All Blacks team cannot simply rely on individual brilliance. It needs clarity, discipline, and the ability to respond when opponents find weaknesses. The encouraging start to the season has given Rennie breathing room, but this South African tour will provide a much tougher examination. The Stormers will be motivated by the opportunity to defeat an international giant, and that motivation could make the opening stages particularly intense. The prediction, however, still leans toward an All Blacks victory because of their experience, recent confidence, and overall quality across the squad. New Zealand should have enough attacking weapons to eventually create separation on the scoreboard, especially if their forwards establish the parity that Barrett has identified as essential. A comfortable victory is possible, but it would be a mistake to expect an effortless night. The Stormers have enough physical power and tactical intelligence to make the All Blacks work for every point. In many ways, that is exactly what Rennie needs. If the All Blacks dominate from the beginning and cruise to victory, they will gain confidence. But if the Stormers force them into a difficult contest, the coaching staff could gain even more valuable information. The ideal scenario for New Zealand would be a match in which their key combinations are tested, their forwards are challenged, and their younger players are forced to make important decisions under pressure before eventually securing the result. For the Stormers, meanwhile, the objective should be to stay within touching distance deep into the second half and make the All Blacks feel genuine pressure. If they can do that, the match could become a dramatic contest rather than the straightforward victory many observers expect for New Zealand. Ultimately, this historic meeting is about more than the final score. It is another piece of the larger puzzle being assembled by Dave Rennie as he attempts to restore the All Blacks to the very top of world rugby. The road ahead eventually leads to the Springboks, and every match before that series provides another opportunity to identify strengths, expose weaknesses, and build belief. The Stormers have been handed the chance to test those ambitions earlier than anyone expected, and they will have no intention of making life comfortable for their famous visitors. Expect a physical opening, an intense battle at the set piece, moments of attacking brilliance from both sides, and a fascinating tactical contest between a determined Stormers team and an All Blacks side desperate to continue its positive momentum. If New Zealand can control the physical battle and maintain discipline, they should have enough quality to win. But the real victory for Rennie may come from the answers he receives rather than the margin on the scoreboard. And with the Springboks waiting further down the road, those answers could prove invaluable.